and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode, I will be continuing my journey further into the wizarding world of Harry Potter with the 6th movie adaptation derived from the works of J.K. Rowling. That is, of course, the movie based on the 6th and penultimate book in the Harry Potter series. The 2009 fantasy adventure, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, as directed once again by David Yates, who continues in the director's chair following his debut with the series after directing the last movie in the series, 2007's Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Now, before I get started, I just wanted to issue a disclaimer, as I've done every single time, that for each movie so far, I can't comment on the movie with respect to the books. Being the muggle that I am, I never actually have read any one of them at this point. So I'll be purely coming from the point of view of the movie itself and the overall Harry Potter movie franchise, rather than going into detail with regards to its closeness to the source material. I am not remotely qualified to even comment. So, how epic is this? 6 years in, watching these movies back to back from those very first moments as we visited Diagon Alley, walked through those imposing but welcoming doors at Hogwarts, and learned of the sinister elements of this wizarding world, lurking within the shadows right through our kind of initiation into the Order of the Phoenix and Dumbledore's army, to the rising Dark Lord Voldemort, and indeed the ever-growing and determined friendship between the series' 3 protagonists, Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, and Hermione Granger, as played by Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson respectively. What an absolutely wondrous, enchanting journey indeed. And we aren't quite at the end game yet. This year, at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, tensions are on a knife edge as the chilling revelation of one of the most feared wizards in the history of magic makes his return. Voldemort, the Dark Lord, as played by Ralph Fiennes, although not actually kind of being in this movie directly, his followers, the Death Eaters, are out of the shadows, raging war on the Muggles. Well, us non-magic folk, you know, and terrorising those who stand against them. However, amongst the darkness, the plots, the secrets and the overwhelming danger that our intrepid trio find themselves in this term, they still find time to drop in on a few lessons, as you do, fall in love and out of love again, and still discover that this world still holds much allure and promise, despite everything threatening to take it away and everything that they hold dear. This time around, they must dig deep and hunt for clues to the remnants of a memory, which may just hold the key to defeating Voldemort once and for all. So, this movie has a really grim and very depressing aesthetic right from the start. It's not a bad thing. It works very well against the darker nature of the story and where these characters have kind of found themselves after 6 years. But it is noticeable. The film's palette is much, much more subdued. A deliberate attempt to kind of reflect the sombre and desperate nature of the situation within this magical world. A once thriving and vibrant world now living in fear and, so sad to think that this is the outcome, especially when you compare this to the majesty and rich tapestry of the first movie. But again, the sharp grey hues serve this movie very well in their own way, adding to the gravity and the prominence of this situation. It does all feel very gothically alchemist, to me. And somebody has kind of, like somebody has kind of ripped the light out of this universe. And indeed, in some respects, they have. And, the cinematography has been excellently crafted to bring elements into focus that feed on this, as well as effectively bringing the light that does remain, the resistance and the resilience, so to speak, into kind of more sharper, more emotional focal points within the film. It's a very serious film. It has a lot to kind of get through and convey, and in this it's never really kind of caught lacking, not at all. It can get a tad convoluted, perhaps, I would say. Some elements even seem more tagged on for effect than they kind of have done previously in the series. Rushed or simply glossed over as well, just a little bit. But in the end, everything does kind of come together in its own way, providing kind of a very emotionally satisfying and balanced entry into the series overall. The movie does kind of take a different tact from some of its predecessors, concentrating very, very much on its characters, their role in the story, and their development through and through. Now, each have done in their own way, of course, but this kind of chose, especially following the more frantic and kind of action-orientated events of the last few movies, to take this kind of step back, to examine more depth of Voldemort's past, rather than kind of aim to yield this kind of massive spectacle and a final battle, giving us a much more subdued and kind of depressive end game in this one, that instead kind of drew on the emotional connection that we had formed with these characters over the last 6 years, and indeed the most poignant and profound ways it does. It still has plenty of the magic that has made each movie in the series such a treat, but this is an understated entry for the most part, almost keeping the seat warm, I would say, for what is yet to come. Indeed, though there are still plenty of secrets still left to be uncovered, deception, subterfuge and intrigue throughout for sure, but ultimately it's a film that carries a heavy burden, and this is reflected in its sombre and brooding atmospherics. But on the other side of the coin, there are some very tender, endearing and very heartwarming moments throughout. It is still very much a Potter movie at its heart. It doesn't forget this, and without a doubt, and this is no more so going to be highlighted in just how much the roles and range of those involved continue to expand, to keep kind of pumping life into this series, even now, 6 films in. It's surprising just how different each film has actually been up to this point, yet each feeling very similar and connected to the franchise as a whole. Each has presented a very kind of different theme, had different and often very starkly different cinematography up to this point and resonance, but has kept this kind of strong link to the others, and The Half-Blood Prince certainly brings its own charm to the fold, whilst carrying on, and carrying forward the best elements and threads of what makes the series so fantastic. It's still got its fair share of delightfully playful moments, and certainly doesn't lose track of its heritage, being a very observant movie that has, more than a few moments that make us feel very nostalgic nods indeed back to where the series began, with a tragically dark, reminiscent quality. It still has some fantastic classroom antics. Professor Snape, as played by Alan Rickman, finally gets that coveted role, but hazardous role, of defence against the dark arts teacher, as he has so wished for all the movies so far. And Potions class is a blast. Harry's not above a bit of cheating, it turns out, or at least bending the rules, perhaps. Notably, after a few missed opportunities over the last few movies in the series, Draco Malfoy, as played by Tom Felton, gets his time to shine here, stepping it up as a potential villain in the making, as one of the film's secondary antagonists this time around. I still think they could have done more, and I think the role could have used more of an emotional connection to the audience, but it was still great to see some more darkness here, on a more kind of level where one might perceive a dark wizard in training to be. Additionally, the main trio are on top form. They do return on top form, establishing their friendships and place not only within their own group, but now as seniors at Hogwarts. Clearly knowing the ropes and how to kind of, pull a few strings, still grappling with their classes amidst the looming peril, and even perhaps finding a bit of love along the way. Dealing with their feelings and very much coming into their own as young adults, as we've kind of been seeing them becoming over the past few entries. What I would say, given that the movie's place in the overall series, is that this can feel a bit like a placeholder, if you like, between the past and the future. Keeping kind of seat warm, like I've said, before this grand finale, which is going to be inevitable, the calm before the storm. Perhaps it's a bit slower to charm. It doesn't give up its secrets easily and can feel a little bit more lacklustre than we have kind of become accustomed to. It does act as a means to an end, and can certainly feel this way. But for me, this all ensures that we have never felt simply as just another rehash of the same as we've seen before. It still offered something unique, intriguing and captivating in its own right. Overall, yet again, another absolutely solid entry into the franchise with an intriguingly powerful and emotive story this time around that makes the most of the emotional connections we have built with the characters, you know, over these last 6 years. With some truly moving and kind of poignant moments tying this series together and setting us forth, arming and preparing us for the hardships and the darkness still yet to come. It's a bleak movie, you know, with a very gothically grey aesthetic right from the start. Subdued and stark cinematography that conveys the desperation and despair of this magical world, given the Dark Lord's return. Yet one which still manages to find, amongst its cold exterior, a distinct warmth and intense emotional payoff that still yields and builds on some of the best elements of the franchise, whilst making its own mark and statement as the linchpin between the past and what is yet to follow. A very well-crafted movie, I think, with a distinct love for the characters, the story, and the franchise as a whole, that sets out to be distinctive and certainly succeeds, I think, in bringing a more character-driven story, with a rich tapestry of friendship, love, loss, life, and adventure, you know, that remains even as a grey and broody as this gets. Very much a Harry Potter movie at its heart. It still is, with probably, in the end, one of the biggest hearts of the series, you know? So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you here at SciFirst Movie Talk. Definitely love to have you back. Most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.